Hello, this is Ted Hammersborg's video essay for Persepolis, the second half of Persepolis Part 1. Um, I really enjoyed the author's reflections on the complexities of war. Starting off on page 81, Margie insists on framing the Iraqi war with Iraq as Islamic invaders, forcing Islam upon the population. But her father knows better and reminds her that it's the people of Iran forcing their fundamentalist beliefs on other Iranians. And you can't really blame the Iraqis for what's happening. Her teacher on page 86 does not embrace this view of framing the Iraqi invasion as another Muslim invasion 1400 years later. She shuts that down. I like how the author on page 84 kind of highlights how intoxicating patriotism can be. Her father dances with her when they learn that Iran has retaliated against Iraq's bombing by bombing them back, but that joy in that patriotic joy is tempered on page 86 when she learns that her friend's father, a pilot, died in the air raid, and her friend says, "I wish he were here. I wish he were alive in jail rather than dead and a hero." And I think it's very clever of the author to make sure that those patriotic, childlike reflections are tempered by kind of the darker side of war. It reminds me very much of my childhood support for the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. I was very gung-ho, as a lot of young kids were. I was in about third grade when it all happened. And I just wanting to have a simple black and white narrative is very attractive, and I think it's very human. Um, Another aspect of the story that I enjoyed this week is how the author continues to highlight her privilege and her family's privilege, her social circle's privilege during all of the um, ramifications of the revolution and the war with Iraq. Um, while some people are having their children sent to the front to die as child soldiers on page 101, her family on page 86 are just facing food shortages at the grocery, and they don't have enough gas to fill their Cadillac. And I think highlighting that is very clever of the author, and I really enjoyed it. So there's child soldiers being given plastic keys painted gold and sent to die as cannon fodder in the front, minesweepers in mass. And at the same time, she's able to go to her room and call her friend and plan to go to a party and listen to punk rock. So I think it's really interesting that her and her family are insulated from some of the effects of the war. And it's the poor people who are being really fed the fundamentalist lies and sent to the front to die. Um, I like how when her uncle suffers his third heart attack, his wife is um, like Margie's aunt is very, very eager to condemn the hospital administrator for converting to a more fundamentalist version of Islam and benefiting from the power regime by becoming a hospital administrator. Formerly, he was a window washer, but he's really taken advantage of the change of power that the regime change has given him, and he's elevated his status. And what makes me, I think it's really clever by the author is she's highlighting that this family, this aunt and uncle, were rich enough to be able to send their son to Sweden to avoid being drafted into the army, and they're going to be able to afford to send the uncle to England for heart surgery, but she has the gall to judge another Iranian for climbing the social ladder and by embracing revolutionary values. And I think it's really telling that you don't really know the political history of the aunt and uncle, but you get the feeling they're a little more apolitical, and they weren't doing much to fight the Shah's regime before the revolution, and now they're angry with other less entitled or less powerful people benefiting from the religious revolution that's overswept Iran. But it's not all horror in the second half of the book. I liked how the author made some time for some humor. On page 94, when she's watching television and kind of pondering how some Muslims believe that dying in war can entitle you to virgins in heaven. sexual pleasure and like a marriage in heaven. And in the book, they framed it as carnal knowledge. On page 94, she makes a bit of a joke as Margie is watching a bunch of the faces go of the martyrs go across the television. He says, "It is obvious that many of the fighters died virgins," and I think that's a kind of subtle jab at the looks of a lot of these guys who died. A 12-year-old thinking, "Yeah, like I don't really see the appeal of any of these guys. It's obviously obvious that they died virgins, and that's why they signed up." Um, I thought that was really funny, and I think it was intentional on the author's part. Page 96, when her father's arguing with her teacher over having to wear veils, he says to her, "If hair is as stimulating as you say, you need to shave your mustache." That reminded me of my father. Sometimes he would just get very aggressive in day-to-day conversations with people. I remember one time there were two people protesting the treatment of elephants by the circus, and he just yelled at them as we were walking into the circus, "Don't you have anything better to do?" And it was just so out of character for my father to get so riled up. But I think the pictures of the elephants really upset him. He didn't like that his kids had to see something so horrible. And I like that her father lost his temper. He doesn't do that a lot during the course of the book. And I think the imagery of her father smuggling posters in the back of his jacket on page 129 was really funny too. So she mixes in some levity into what's a horrible situation, and I think again it goes to reinforce that her family are shielded from some of the most dire consequences of the regime change and the war, especially. I enjoyed this week's reading immensely, and I look forward to engaging in the discussion.